is a really exciting time because today I'm going to sow my first onion seeds of the new year. And when you come to sowing seeds, there's a number of things that you can do to help increase the possibility of them being successful, because there are common mistakes that I've made in the past, that I know others have made, in relation to whether the seeds have germinated or maybe completely failed. So in this video I'm going to show you some ways in which you can increase the possibility of your seeds germinating and growing. And if you do like this video, don't forget to give it the thumbs up, and if you want to subscribe to the channel for future videos on how to sow and grow fruit and veg and one or two recipe ideas, don't forget to press the subscribe button. So before I even start thinking about planting any seeds, the first thing I've done, as this is a new growing year, I've cleaned all of my pots and trays. This is something I often think that other growers often overlook, and it just reduces the possibility of any underlying fungus or diseases that may be residue in the remains of the soil or compost in the pot. It's a very simple thing to do. It takes a few seconds, just a hot soapy water, just a diluted bit of washing up liquid, rinse them out, leave them for a little while, and then I'll just give them a spray with some clear water just to clear any suds off them, and then I'm good to go for the new growing season. Now, a really important factor in relation to the success of your seeds will be the type of compost that you select. Different seeds will require different types of compost. Here in the tray here I have two different types of compost. Multi-purpose compost here, which is this one here, and this is a seed compost which is specifically made for germination of small seeds. Now, the multi-purpose compost is usually a little bit cheaper, but the problem with multi-purpose compost, particularly when you're trying to germinate small seeds, is that they can contain different sizes of bits in them. They can be quite large and quite small, and that's just because of the way that they've decomposed, whereas the finer compost is much more smoother and much more granular, and therefore much better for smaller seeds. Now, there's two things you can do. You can go and purchase, like I've done, some specific seed compost, which you do pay a bit more money for, but you can literally use it straight out of the bag, straight into the tray, and you can be pretty confident that's the right type of compost. The other option is to buy multi-purpose compost, and then you can sieve it, put it through a sieve, and then that'll get rid of all the larger bits, and then you can put them into your compost pile or use them around some of your plants, and that will give you compost that will probably be suitable for smaller seeds. But for certain types of seeds, for the smaller seeds, I'll always go and buy the seed compost. This is by Levington's. It's one I've purchased for the last couple of years. It's called their Advanced Mixed, and but there are lots of other types of this type of compost on the market, but for you to purchase. Now, the reason we would prefer more granular type of compost is because we want the seed to be in contact with the actual compost themselves. That sounds obvious, doesn't it? But imagine you sprinkle small seeds. When you sprinkle them on the surface, they need to be in contact with the compost itself. If you were to just use unsieved multi-purpose compost, there could be lots of different air pockets in there because of the different sizes of the granules that you're going to get in there, depending upon its composition. So the type of seed compost you use is really important. Now, for larger type of seeds like broad beans, French beans, even peas, mange too, multi-purpose compost is absolutely fine. In fact, multi-purpose compost is fine for most seeds. It's just for the very small seeds I go for the specific seed compost. Now, a few other common mistakes that are made when sowing seeds, and these are mistakes I've made in the past, is that you sow too many. Over the last few years, I've gone for much smaller trays for sowing seeds, because some of these packets of seeds have hundreds of seeds in them, and if you were to sow the whole packet, you'd end up with more than you could probably have space for, particularly if they all germinated. So I tend to go for a smaller tray. Now, a lot of people make a mistake with watering. They will put the compost in, then put the seeds in and then water. I tend to not do that because particularly if you flood the tray with water and the seeds already in there, you could end up washing the seeds out or completely pushing them down. What I will do is I will water the compost first before I put the seeds in. So I've got a homemade old milk container here, which I've put holes in the top here. Very thin holes, and I'll literally just soak each of the 4 parts of this tray. Give it a good soaking, because remember the water is actually draining downwards, so it's not going to do any harm. Now that's ready to receive the seeds, and the watering is really important. So I'm going to get my packet of seeds. All you want to do is just put a few seeds in your hand. Now, as you can see on the camera, these are very small seeds, which is why I'm using this seed compost here. What we want to try and do is sow them as thinly as possible, and the way we'll do that is to gently just tap them out the palm of our hand so that they just fall randomly in the various 4 cells. Now that the seeds are in the tray, all I need to do is just give it a very light sprinkling of compost and just gently tap it down. Now, because the seeds are now covered with the compost, I can give them a very light watering over the top just to bed them in, and it is a very light watering, as you can see, remembering that the compost is already wet underneath, and then we'll stick a label on there, and that is our seeds planted. Now, I've planted all the 3 varieties that I wanted to, as you can see. They're all ready now and planted. Now, for other types of seeds, which I'm not going to do for these particular seeds because of the actual size of the seeds and the compost mix, is I may introduce into the compost mix something called vermiculite. You can see here it's quite a granular type of material that when mixed in will absorb a lot of moisture, which is really good for seeds, so that if that is in the mix when I water, it will then retain the moisture for a longer period of time. So it's a really good introduction to the seed mix for certain types of seeds. For seeds like celery and other vegetables that can germinate at colder temperatures and they're particularly small, I won't even put a covering of compost over the top of the seeds. I'll just sprinkle the vermiculite over the surface so that it's got a layer of vermiculite over the top. So every time I water, there's going to be a good retention of moisture. So vermiculite is something that you might think about introducing to add moisture into your compost mix to help the germination of your seeds. Now, something else that impacts on the germination of your vegetable seeds is the temperature, and this is also an often misunderstood thing by growers. You need to understand that different seeds require different temperatures to germinate. Now, for these onions, as you can see, I'm putting them inside my heated propagator. There's a lid which goes over the top, and when I plug that in, that will get them to a temperature of between 15 to 16 degrees centigrade until they germinate. Now, when they germinate, I'll probably leave them in there for 3 to 4 days and then take them out and put them in my unheated poly shed where they'll continue to grow absolutely fine. I won't leave them in too long because I don't want them to grow too quickly. Now, if you're growing other types of vegetables, then you will need to understand the temperature. So things like tomatoes, peppers, even sweet corn require higher temperatures, typically 20 degrees centigrade plus, in order for them to germinate. So if you don't have a heated greenhouse or haven't got the facility, then one of these propagators is ideal. There is a video on my channel which I did last year showing you when I bought this from unboxing to use, and I've got to say I'm really impressed with this. Cost me, I think I said in the video, about £43, but you can get them cheaper. I have seen them as low as £30. You can get half-size ones which are even cheaper, but clearly with a half-size one they're not going to get as much veg in there. So think about the temperature in order for them to germinate, which is really important. Now, light is also a particularly important element in relation to seed germination and plant growth generally. There has to be a good amount of light to help with that process. Now, notice my potting shed here, I've got one window and a door which is partially glazed. But when I come inside the potting shed, it's pretty dull. I mean, there's a light on at the moment, but that doesn't stay on permanently. Now, if I show you the onion seeds that we've just put in, you'll notice that they're right by the window. That's because I want them to get as much natural light as possible. But the only light they're going to get in this particular shed is from that window. Now, once the seeds have germinated, they will need more light for them to grow properly. And what will happen is, if they get insufficient light, they'll become something called leggy. That's where they almost panic and they try to draw themselves to whatever light is available, and they will start to develop quite thin shoots that will be very flimsy. That's something called legginess. Now, I have done a video on my channel which shows you how to deal with leggy plants, but there are a number of ways you can deal with that. The first thing you can do is you can rotate the plant. So if you've got limited light, when the plants start to go in a certain direction because they migrate towards the light, the following day just turn them around. The other option is to take them outside during the daytime so that they get as much natural light as possible. So light is really important. Nowadays, I'm aware that more and more people are using grow lights. Now, I haven't gone down that road at the moment, and grow lights provide an artificial environment that do provide sufficient light to help prevent legginess and to help seed germination. But of course, it all depends upon your budget. So just bear in mind how important light is in relation to seed germination. And that's another reason often why seeds don't germinate as quickly as possible, or sometimes not at all. So just a couple of points to finish with. The first one is the depth of the seeds. Now, in the video, you noted I planted the onion seeds on the surface, and that's because they're very small seeds. If you're planting larger seeds, then clearly they will need to go a little bit deeper, but don't make them too deep. Always look at the instructions on the packet to see what the depth should be. As a general rule, take for example broad beans or French beans, I normally will plant the depth of twice the height of the seed, but follow the instructions on the seed. If you do plant them too deep, then clearly they're going to take longer to germinate because they're going to be struggling through more compost. The second point is always try and use new seeds. I in the past have used old seeds and they have worked perfectly fine, but definitely the germination rate and success rate of your seeds will be increased if you're using fresh seeds every year. But always check the dates on the packets to see what the expiry dates are, to see how long you can use them. So there, I hope the videos give you some good ideas about what you might do differently, or maybe ideas for how you can increase the potential for your seeds to germinate. And if you've got any comments about techniques that you've used, maybe that I haven't covered, that have been successful, or maybe even not, put them in the comments below, because it's great for us all to learn what we've done successfully and what we've learned from the mistakes that we've made as well. So just pop them in the comments below. And don't forget, if you did like the video, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to the channel if you want to see future videos on how to sow and grow fruit and veg and a few recipe ideas. I'm off now to enjoy my cup of tea, and I'll see you all on the next video.